Hello, get ready for a great show.
Black space is a place for us.
Real people with real issues.
Discussing real topics.
Black space.
A safe space for our community.
Hello, I'm George Middleton, your host this evening on this podcast episode of Black Space Live. The topic of our discussion today, we're going to examine the question, is marriage a bad deal for men? I'd like to take this time briefly to encourage you to like, subscribe, and share this podcast. In other words, don't be selfish with this content. Share the love. You can catch Black Space Live on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, and Spotify. And you can catch us on Anchor FM, Podcast Addict, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Now, normally we have a star-studded cast of panelists for discussion today, but we only have room for one star today, and that is the great Penny Lamar, or Lamar Penny Finley. So we're going to let Penny, most of you already know him. He's known worldwide. He's international with his game. And wherever you are, he can get to you now. He's got his own private jet to get to wherever you are. What's that song by Alita Adams? You can reach me by airway. I don't care how you get here. Just get here.
Get here if you can.
That's it. So, hey, Penny, just say hi to the listeners, watchers, and let them know anything for those that may not have heard of you.
As George said, I'm Lamar Finley, affectionately known as Penny, broadcasting you live from the great state of Florida, although we are dealing with some crazy weather right now. We get our second hurricane in, a month? Kind of moving on through. I am a pilot. I'm also a small business owner here in Florida, and I'm full of opinions.
Okay, that's a t-shirt. So what I want to do, as you know, I normally do on these shows, is I set the baseline context for the conversation. And so I like to start off by saying, with this topic, it's a great question, a very relevant question. Is marriage a bad deal for men? Statistically speaking, both men and women benefit from marriage, but through studies, it has been found that men overall seem to benefit more. In addition to being happier and healthier than bachelors, married men earn more money and live longer. The statistical benefit studies frame the benefits in three areas: biological, behavioral, and psychological. From the biological perspective, marriage improves health indicators and decreases the risk of certain diseases. On the other hand, marital stress, divorce, and death of a spouse have an opposite effect, particularly on men. Studies over the years have found that marriage confers some health advantages that married men enjoy over their never married, widowed, and divorced counterparts. From a behavioral component, marriage influences behavioral factors, several of which contribute to better cumulative health. Married men are likely to receive regular checkups, medical care, maintain healthy diets, exercise, and enjoy higher standards of living. In addition, married men benefit from lower levels of stress and fewer stress-related diseases. And then from a psychological perspective, the psychological advantages include reduced risk of depression, lower incidence of isolation, and easier access to social interaction. Older married men in retirement also report more satisfaction with life than unmarried men. So again, there's a plethora of studies out here that seem to answer this question already. However, there is definitely today a polar opposite view on this concept of marriage and how it's supposed to benefit men in particular. So I did some research on why men are less interested in marriage, but before I read some of that, I would like to just open this up to Penny and let him kind of expound on what I've shared already, and then get your view on the polar perspective, the opposite polar perspective of this ethereal concept of marriage being good for men, the marriage benefits for men. What say you, Penny?
So I don't disagree with that. I think that marriage is extraordinarily beneficial to men. Certainly, you have someone that you're building with. I think men are, by and large, we're easy. Once we get to the point of continuity, in a relationship, it's kind of like, we're smooth sailing. There's obviously less stress. You don't have to deal with as many people. That continuity gives you more of like a life routine, as I call it. And of course, you have a partner that has a vested interest in you and keeping you healthy, and because they want to keep the relationship both literally healthy and metaphorically healthy. And so that's why men benefit. You have that person watching back, making sure you're watching your sugar if your sugars get up. Watching the salt intake if your blood pressure gets high, making sure you drag your behind onto the doctor. Because again, they have a vested interest in making sure that you're good. And so I think that's one of the major reasons why, men live longer and they're healthier in marriages. And marriage is cheaper. You're bringing all the resources into one house. You are setting up, a legacy for, your offspring. But it's definitely financially advantageous for men to be married. And overall, I've always said marriage is, unfortunately, though, it's very high risk, but it's also a very high reward.
So with all of that in line, what's going on? What's going on with the culture today? There's whole markets out here now based on the resurgence of masculinity and the rejection of feminism and all these things. Explain it to us. What's going on that is cluttering this perception of marital benefits for men?
So there's a lot going on, right? And there's a lot of, white noise around the subject. And I think a lot of people are being dishonest, around the subject. There's a new saying that I have, and it's not really my saying, right? I stole it from the movie White Man Can't Jump. The line where, what was it? Billy Hoyle's character is talking to Sidney's character. Billy Hoyle being, Woody Harrelson's character talking to Wesley Snipes' character. He said, "You would rather look good and lose than look bad and win." And so when I say that with respect to people, with respect to how they're talking, their views on marriage and their views on being single. I think there are a lot of people that are not happy being single that are pretending like they are happy being single, and they're putting their chest out about how great it is, both men and women. I think that they're losing, trying to put up this front that they're winning, right? They're trying to look good and they're losing instead of being honest, right? And saying, look, I want to couple up with somebody, but it's me that won't humble themselves enough to put the work in to find, to first of all, to attract somebody decent. And so that's to look bad and win, right? Because that's going to go against this whole narrative that you're doing good. Instead of being honest, look, I'm out here struggling. Things are rough for me, and I'm not putting in the proper work to attract other, somebody to couple up to win. And so that's my whole, look bad and win, look good and lose line.
That is a very interesting analogy. And I see the relevance because for all of the statistical studies that I read, um, it doesn't really refer to those drawbacks. There are marital drawbacks. I mean, there's pros and cons to everything. So are you suggesting that this analogy refers to the cons of marriage?
Yeah, so there are cons of marriage. I mean, marriage is not it's not, Disney. It's not, the 2 hour movie where, things go to hell and then at the end you end up figuring it out. It's not I can't say Lifetime, because Lifetime is pretty those movies are bad. But it's not what we see on TV, and I mean that in both senses. It's not the extremes that we see on TV. Certainly, it's not the "What's Love Got to Do with It" marriage, where you have the narcissistic, abusive husband, and it's definitely not the Disney marriage, where things are just peachy keen all the time, or the Leave It to Beaver type marriage, where things are always peachy keen. Marriage is work, just like with your career. You prepare for it, right? You go to school, you get education, and once you get into your career, certainly you don't stay stationary. You kind of you keep moving to improve on your skills. You go to training, you make sure you take constructive criticism and you work at it if it's something that you really want and you want to excel at. Marriage is no different, and I think that a lot of people, when they run into those difficulties in marriage, it's like, especially in this society in which there's an app for everything. There's literally an app for everything. If there's not an app for it, there's a website for it. If you want to find a quick fling, to get out, there's Tinder and Plenty of Fish and Hinge and Bumble. There's even, what's that? The married website, the website for discreet relations. I forget what it's called. Where you can kind of meet up, with people. But in this era, in which is so easy to abort, no pun intended, it's so easy to get out of a marriage. It's no wonder why they give up. There's not a lot of incentive to stay, because there's that quick fix. There's always a quick fix. And so, yeah, a lot of people are going to view marriage as negative. It's the same person for the rest of your life, and it's the same sex, and it's monotony, it's boring. Yeah, marriage can be boring, but they don't look at the long-term benefits, because there's so many different ways to just quickly get out. And again, we make it so easy to get out of marriage too. So I kind of see both sides.
Okay, so you bring up one of the first themes that I want to explore: marriage equals work. That really is a very layered and significant aspect that I don't think we don't prepare ourselves for. We don't prepare our children for. We don't prepare ourselves for the realities of what it takes to make a marriage work. Frank, I see you on here in the comment section. Welcome back. He's got a question. Wait, cheaper? Frank, if you wouldn't mind explaining that more so we can address what you're saying. I'm not sure if you're talking about cheaper to keep her or cheaper to stay married. Let us know what you mean by that so we can talk about it.
I think he was referring to when I said marriage is cheaper than being single.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's see if he confirms that. So, work. Now that, I'm a therapist. So I deal with all varieties of family dynamics. And families are work. Just being in the same family with somebody, being a sibling, a brother, sister, son, daughter, that's work. We take these things for granted as if, it just is. But actually there's work. I mean, not all brothers get along, not all sisters get along. Not all mothers love their sons and vice versa. This is not something you take for granted. There is some work that's required. So in the area of marriage, coming from a purely male perspective, I would say that the challenge from a male perspective is that the working aspect of the relationship tends to be least desirous on our female counterparts. Meaning that they just have this expectation that everything they do is going to be great, and that we shouldn't have any negative opinions about anything that they do. If we as men have a bad day, or stuff isn't going right, that takes work sometimes when we come back to the house for our female counterpart to address us emotionally in order to help us navigate through whatever that storm is. We all understand that women have their 30-day cycles, and as men we have to prepare for that. But I think it often gets overlooked that as men, we have cycles in our own right. Well, that's how, when you mention work, that's how I'm framing it. Tell me how you see it.
So I'm framing pretty much the same way. There's ebbs and flows in marriage, and it's not smooth sailing. You're gonna run into disagreements. That's inevitable in relationships, in marriage. You're gonna run into the fact that this person that you thought was so perfect is extraordinarily imperfect, and you're gonna have to make it through those imperfections. You have to make it through the fact that you're two totally different people,
right?
And that's the work part about it. You're gonna have to make it through those points in which things are just not exciting. Marriage does get monotonous. You have to work through those things. And I think a lot of people don't want to put in that work. And marriage is, first and foremost, it's selfless. I think that's the most understated part of marriage that people don't understand. People look at marriage and they think marriage is supposed to make you happy and all this other kind of nonsense. And I'm supposed to get this from my spouse or my mate, and et cetera, but they don't realize that when you're going into the marriage, you've made the decision to love that person. You've made the decision to invest into that person, right? You didn't get into it with the intent, well, I need to get all of what I get out of this. So if you're a man, you didn't get into it thinking, ooh, all the warm cookies I get every night, or all the good home cooking. That's not why you get into the marriage. And the woman shouldn't be getting into the marriage thinking, all this provision I'm gonna get and this protection. You go into it thinking what you're going to do for the other person. And a lot of people get that twisted, and they go into their selfishly. And so when they're not getting out of the marriage what they want, not realizing they're not investing much themselves, they decide to justify them, divesting in the relationship. And a lot of marriages in that way. It's no infidelities, no financial issues, no abuse. They've just decided I'm not getting nothing out of this marriage, so I'm out. I only come to work 2 days a week, and I'm not getting the raise. I think I need to quit. That's the work that I'm talking about.
So you made the comment that you're getting into marriage thinking what you can do for the other person. Is that a typical male attitude? Do most men go in with that idea?
Absolutely. I think that culture trains us to be that way. I mean, think about it. We have to go out and find a woman that we want to marry, right? And how do we set it up? We have to go out, we got to buy a ring, right? It's got to be of decent heritage, and we've got to invest into it. And and then we're taught that in order to do all these things, we got to be in the position to provide for her. We're not trained as men to go out and find a woman that can make a home for us. And no, we have to get the home. We have to get the house. She can come in and make it home. We have to set the stage. And so I think that it's ingrained in us that we have to go out and do for them. I don't think it's the other way around.
Got you. So that kind of gets into one of my questions that I had for the panelists, and I'll get into it. I'll break the question out tonight, but hopefully this will lead into a part 2 where we have a larger panel to really examine this question. But before I get into that question, Frank is back, and Frank says, true. Marriage is typically a husband bringing his resources to a long-term relationship in order to build a family invest in a construct in parentheses. Dealing with women in general is costly. What's that puzzle look you have there, Penny?
So I'm on my laptop here, and Siri interrupted. So you went, Siri interrupts it. Shuts off all the sounds. I didn't hear you for like 10 seconds.
Okay. What was the last thing you heard me say?
Gosh, I can't recall. You were talking about the question that you're going to pose to the group.
Got you. Okay.
And then you expounded on that.
Yeah, there's a question I'm going to get into, but before I do that, I'm going to read Frank's recent comment here, and he was concurring with you, saying, "True, marriage is typically a husband bringing his resources to a long-term relationship in order to build a family." In parentheses, invest in a construct, which I find that an interesting aspect there. Dealing with women in general is costly. We don't tend to talk about marriage up front in terms of cost.
Marriage is expensive, but to Frank's point, women are expensive. That's why it's a lot cheaper for a married man. It's a lot cheaper for a married man than a single man. It's much cheaper.
So here's the question. I know we're supposed to have a few more people on. To the men, do you need a woman or just want one? As it pertains to modern living today. And if so, what do you need or want a woman for?
Ooh, that's a loaded question, George. Oh man. Outside of children, in the modern era, you don't need a woman. You really don't. There's a lot of supplements out there. There's a lot of there's a lot of other ways to meet the wants, those wants. But yeah, outside of children, in this modern era of dating apps and passports and hookup culture, you don't really need a woman outside of because I'm talking about the elephant in the room. To sex in the past for men to marriage in the past was sex, right? That access to that feminine attention. You don't need that. You don't need marriage for that anymore. It's much easier now, especially if you're a man of, as I always say, if you got the look, the game, or resources, you can have access to as much of that feminine attention that you would like, and you can if you maintain those three things, even as you get older, your access doesn't dwindle. I mean, obviously, if you're 40s or 30s and you have resources, you'll have more options than when you're 70s. But I mean, depending on your resources, those options don't really dwindle much. Especially if you keep yourself in decent shape, you still have those options with respect to those quote unquote wants being met. But yeah, outside of children, all the other quote unquote needs that men have, which are really wants, you can still address those things outside of marriage, especially in this society, which is open to it.
So we need women as it pertains to children. Everything else is a want. So put some meat on the bones of the want. What are the wants that a man is looking for in a woman?
And to be clear, so that I don't get canceled, I'm not saying women are just incubators for children. Obviously, there's emotional needs and things of those sorts you get out of marriage, but I didn't go into deep. I kept it simple, right? I kept it simple. But men want physical touch. Men want companionship. Men want we want sounding boards sometimes. We want a support system. sometimes, we need those things. They're good for us. Like we talked about, the fact that women, our wives, keep their husbands healthy. Those things are very necessary. And again, with the hookup culture and with the, culture of cohabitation, you can address those needs without getting married. Again, outside of children, because as a society, we accept those things, and there's a lot of women that will agree to those things.
So physical touch, companionship, meaning being in the same room, doing things together. Is that pretty much it?
I hit on emotional. I'm going to leave the
Okay,
spiritual
you just
for
say
a reason.
emotional.
Yeah, and I'm going to leave the spiritual out now. I'm doing that on purpose.
Okay, before you go, before I ask more about the spiritual, which are you leaving out?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Give me some breakdowns of the emotional. Give me some subsets of the emotional. What are the emotional needs that or wants that we are looking for from women?
So, men have to go out and, and again, when I hate that. I'm so used to having conversations with women. No disrespect to women, in which they give us the one-off. They always want to talk about the one-off. When I talk about men, I'm talking about, competitive, successful men. I'm not talking about financially successful. I'm talking about competitive men that get up every day, go to work, do what they're supposed to do, and they're responsible. That's what I mean by successful. A man that gets up and takes care of his business day in, day out. I don't care if he's making, 30 grand or 300 grand. That's a man that gets up and takes care of his business. I don't judge men or rank men based on, qualify them based on their income. But all those men, regardless of their income status, go out, they slay the dragon, and they take a beating, whether they have a wife in their corner or a girlfriend in their corner. They take a beating from this world. And, sometimes you need encouragement. Sometimes you need cheerleading. Sometimes you need a soundboard. Sometimes you need a press release. I'm not talking about sex. I'm talking about that emotional release. Men deal with life. We lose loved ones. We lose friends. You know what I'm saying? Black men deal with police brutality and the not. Black men deal with discrimination. You know what I'm saying? Black men deal with other black men, and we need that emotional support and outlet in our partner. And that's one of the many emotional needs that men have. Not to mention just an outlet. And I think I said that.
Okay. Frank says, men want variety, but yes, we need a woman for feminine energy. Now that's deep. That feminine energy is that's an ethereal component. How do you interpret the concept of feminine energy? What all is entailed in that?
Whew. Feminine energy is like the gas that makes the combustion engine go, man. Listen, a woman's essence it's hard to put in words, really. From the touch to the sense to the soft voice to the way that they know how to yield that power over us. It's hard to describe. It's comforting, it's encouraging, it's motivational. Man, feminine energy is powerful. It's powerful, and I think it's necessary. I think there's a reason that there's a yin and yang. Just like women feed off of a man's confidence and and assertiveness, we feed off of their softness and femininity. I think it's extraordinarily necessary. You want to see a strong man, there's probably women in this vicinity that he's either catering to or performing for.
So I Googled it, and let me read this off, and you tell me how this hits you. Feminine energy is all of the nurturing traits it takes to connect to human beings in a meaningful and fulfilling way. It's compassionate, kind, empathetic, patient, and emotional. It's about embracing your intuition and creativity. Feminine energy is fluid and free. Wow.
I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. Feminine energy is if men are the frame of the canvas, feminine energy is the paint that goes on that canvas.
Yeah. Well, the lyrics that are coming through or the song title that's coming through my mind right now is Luther Vandross, "A House Is Not a Home."
House. Yes. Love that song. And he's right. He's right.
And as you said earlier, as men, we're going out to get the house, but we need the feminine energy to make the home.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, Frank also said men want variety, but yes, we need a woman for feminine energy. And I'm not seeing that as a but yes, I'm seeing that as an and variety. So let me before I get deep into that, let me ask you this. Can you have variety with the same woman?
Absolutely. You absolutely can. It's called keeping it spicy. It's called changing it up. I think that, and I've seen this out of, successful couples and women that study their husbands, right? And they keep it what they call fresh. So yeah, you can really have a ride. Keep listening, on them. We teach that a lot because that's, and again, this is perception, right? This is perception in my observation. We, as a society, our women, instead of honoring and chasing and investing in men, no, we're teaching them they're the investment, and he has it. And if there's a lack, it's on him. He needs to pick it up. We don't really put in them enough to invest in their man. That's why when marriages become monotonous and boring, you hear it. Women all the time, why'd you leave him? Well, I got bored. He was boring. Really? That's why you left this man that was working and providing and ain't never cheated on you or put his hands on you because he was boring? Why didn't you try to liven it up? Why didn't you try to freshen it up? Why is all the burden on him?
So the boring piece to me, when I hear boring, I often see it as deeper than boring. I don't think the word boring is what it really is. I think that that's where there is a disconnect. There's a myth that we operate on as human beings that the person that I met is going to be the person that is going to be the same person 10 years from now. And we change from day to day. We change from second to second. Our bodies change. So when we meet that version of each other and we're attracted to that, there is a subconscious expectation that is the person we're going to have the rest of our lives. And when people change according to their developmental stage, according to their age, according to their profession, sometimes just the interest in life, your interests change. I mean, look at you. You are a primary example of that. You were, and probably still are, a strong political figure, knowledgeable. You still have contacts, resources. But now you've embarked in a whole nother career that's requiring different skill sets from you. So boring, I think, is not the correct term. I think people lose or stop being interested in each other's direction of development. That's kind of a complicated way of saying it, but we lose interest of the path that a person has chosen. Help make that more simple. Help simplify that for me, because I'm using a lot of words to describe this dynamic. Tell me how my perspective hits you.
So you're saying that we evolve we evolve, and that evolution may not, that our partner may not be cool with that evolution, so to speak, or they may not have adapted to that evolution.
I like how you put that.
Does that make sense?
I like how you put that. That was classic, bro. That was classic.
That was funny. She's funny. She is funny.
Oh man, I love how you put that. Say that again.
We evolve as individuals, and I don't think that our partners I don't think our partners adapt to that evolution. We're the same physical being, but mentally, maybe even vocationally, we change, and our partners like, wait a minute, how do I adjust to this new person? How do I adjust? I can't adjust. And so I guess that's where the whole boring comes in, because they haven't adapted adapted to the new you. They're still kind of looking and hoping that the old you shows up, and they're just kind of sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And when the old you doesn't show up, it's like, I don't like this anymore.
Correct. Penny, you complete me. You just found the simpler words to express, because I was being really complicated with it. Now that we're of the understanding there, do you see that as the real problem, or is it just people get bored?
No, I can see that as being a problem. I definitely can see that as being a problem. And it goes back to, and again, I hear this more out of women, much more out of women than men. It goes back to the whole, who's being taught to do what, relationships, and I look at successful relationships that have lasted the quote unquote test of time. And you see how men speak highly of their women, because those women evolve and they adapt along with their partners.
And that goes back to
when you invest. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, finish up. I'll tie it in. Finish it up.
I was going to say, and when you and with men, when you adapt to us and continue to invest in us. Remember, I've made this point many times. You in investing in me is boosting my ego. Man, I'm going to give you the world, and which is going to in turn make you happy. That's that investment piece. I can't expect to log into my E-Trade account and put $10 in there, and then magically, it's growing because I haven't invested anything. You can't grow what you're not investing.
And that investment, that's the work. That investment is the work. And it goes back to your initial theme component that inspired me toward this direction of discussion. Marriage equals work.
Marriage is definitely work.
And I think it's easy to focus on what we can see. It takes work to build a home. It takes work to maintain a home. It takes work just to work. So those are the easy parts. We can see that, and it's easy to accomplish, and it's easy to assess, because you're either doing it or you're not. But where marriage really requires of you is the area that you can't see so well. And how one evolves. It's ironic because we see each other every day. I'm just thinking this stuff as we're talking now. But we see each other every day, and yet we miss the changes because we see each other every day. Versus when you see someone and then you take a couple of weeks and you see them in, maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, Oh, you look different. Your hair's changed. I didn't notice that you. That's because you hadn't seen him in a while. And that's just so ironic because now, in order to maintain a long-term committed relationship, you have to intentionally keep your focus and awareness on the person that you are in a relationship with, amongst all of the other things that's required of you to do. That is a challenge.
And I hate that there's so many cliches that I draw from my profession, but the metaphors are this, they just make them simple. I often call husband and wife captain, first officer, right? Because while they both have the similar skill set, they can both fly the plane.
Mm-hmm.
The buck stops with the captain, right? The first officer's job is to basically make sure the captain's on his P's and Q's. But the captain has to recognize his weaknesses and when to, delegate, right? And the passengers is the family. As long as that plane's flying safe, the family's fine, right? But in the airlines, pilots have to, because it does become very monotonous. But every 2 years, you have to do what's called a flight review. It's like you get your driver's license. Imagine if every 2 years, they say you go out and do another road test to show your proficiencies, right? As a pilot, every 90 days you have to have so many landings and so many takeoffs to keep your skills proficient, because the more hours you have, the more you get stuck into this routine, and the higher the chance of an accident happen, because you miss little stuff. And so you have to constantly work on your skills to make sure that you're still sharp. And in a marriage, that's going out on dates.
Brother.
You see what I'm saying? That's doing the little things like complimenting your spouse, keeping the sex and the laugh coming. That's that work that breaks up the monotony and keeps it fresh.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're doing that, if you're dating your spouse, right, you're going to see the evolution, because if you're sitting at dinner, right, with your husband that decided to change careers, if you probe, or let's change it. If your wife decides to do the same, and women like they're the social of the two, and you begin to ask them about the new job, they're going to tell you, and you're going to see the new interests, you're going to see the change, you're going to see the new direction, and you can adapt to that. You can adapt to it, and it keeps things fresh. And to steal another, airline metaphor, you stay on course.
Penny, you can write the book. That's a book.
Definitely got a lot of material.
That's a book.
Definitely got a lot of material.
That analogy is spot on. Wow. So, before I go to the next, go expound on that further. Welcome, Capri Joel. Love Capri because Capri brings it. Always has some great comments. Capri said, loses interest in commitment seems to be a simplified way to describe what you mentioned, George. And I guess she's giving me a simpler way of describing this concept of boredom and evolution. And then Frank comes in. Oh, this is good. Frank, Penny, Frank might be related to you in some fashion, I think. You two may be some kindred spirits. But Frank says it like this, as it pertains to evolution, evolving. She doesn't want you to evolve unless you run it by her first. That's a mic drop.
Yeah, it is.
Add something to that, Penny.
It's funny. It's funny how popular culture tells us that and I'm not starting to I'm not firing any gender war shots, but I have a reputation, right? Men are described as the selfish ones, but we're not really the selfish ones. It's our women that are selfish, in that they want this provision and protection. They want us to lead and have a direction of being our purpose. But it's like, yeah, I want you to lead, but let me show you how to do it. I want you to choose the path, but let me pick it. It's that selfish and that not not willingness to understand what selflessness is that really, really, really bogs down our women, in popular culture. This narrative it's terrible. So yeah, I could go on and on and on about that whole running by me first thing. It's like the movie where the guy decides that the man is going through a midlife crisis, so he goes out and buys a new suit because he's trying to build himself up. He's just trying to reassure himself that he's still this masculine man, and she thinks, "Who are you doing that for? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that?" And he's like, "I can't do this for myself." But on the flip side, she decides, and it's funny because I was having this conversation yesterday about the women that decide you meet them and they got the hair down the back and they decide to do the big chop and they don't consult you for it. And it's like they do the big chop and you just have to accept it. But God forbid you do the same. That's going to be a conversation.
So here's my question. Here's my next question, just to get the male perspective. See what because Penny, you seem to have the thumb on the pulse of modern man's thinking. So I'm gonna tap into your connection here for as much as I can. Are women today able to put in the work it requires to keep a man's interest?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not that guy that says women are lazy and they don't want to do it, right? That's a broad brush that even I'm not willing to paint, right? But there's a lot of women that fit that bill. But I'm an optimist, right? There's the marriage divorce rate is 50%, right? That means half the women are out here doing it. They're putting in the work. At least half of them are out here doing it and putting in the work. We see it all the time. The energy that they put into, each other and social media, these images, when they take that energy, that same energy, and invest it in a man, they win. They win. I know they're quick to say, "Oh, but men this and but men that." That's some of that's capped. That's that whole trying to look bad and win or look good and lose, category, or mentality. But yeah, they can absolutely do it. They do it every day. They do it every day. They put in the energy to draw men's attention. Keep that same energy. If you can draw them, just keep that same energy.
Okay,
it's not that hard.
Then let me rephrase the question, because yes, women can, but are they?
No, they're not.
And why is that?
They're bailing too quick. I
agree.
So, hey, Zuri.
Hey, Penny.
Well, I'll close this point, then I'll let you jump.
Zuri, do you have a video? Can you instigate your video?
It's dark. I can, but you can't even see anything because, like I said, the weather and the power. Let me see. Camera. See, it's like very dark.
Okay,
and I was using my cell phone.
That's okay. We'll take that.
Okay.
Yeah. Just to set the scene, everybody, Zuri is in the midst of a tropical attack. What'd you say? 30-mile-per-hour winds?
Yeah, the weather's bad here. It's raining. The wind's bad.
Yes. Yeah. And so she's trying to be a trooper and was on, and the power went out. But Zuri was so committed that she figured out a way. So she's back. So welcome back, Zuri.
Thank you.
So as you were going to say?
So I was going to close with this. They're not putting in the work. There's a reason that, 8 out of 10 divorces, they're filing, they're initiating. There's a reason that they have the view of the world that they do, because they're not putting in the work. They'll say the cliches, you are what you attract. Well, then, you can't get nothing for free. They're not putting in the work, because as a society, we're not holding them accountable. We're giving them excuses, even looking at some of the superficial conversations, around, hair and weight and stuff like that. If men push back on those things, right, it's leave us alone, right? Or men are shamed into accepting these things that are substandard with respect to drawing us and keeping our attention, right? And as I've said it many times, a lot of things that women complain complain about, men complaining about, for example, like hair, nails, like that. They're the ones that are complaining. Men aren't complaining about the things. They're the ones complaining. So they're not doing the work. They're just they get excuses. They get excuse after excuse after excuse after excuse. So that's my 2 cents.
So Zero,
Pun intended.
so Zero, I know you just came in, but my question was, at first I framed it as, can women today put in the work? And then after listening to Penny's response, I realized that was a poorly worded question. So I reframed it and updated it and said, are women today doing the work required to maintain a man's interest? What say you?
I would say, that's a hard question. To be honest, though, I would say I agree with Penny a lot in what he's saying, that no, women aren't doing enough. If we can, like you said in the beginning, we can, because otherwise we wouldn't have been born to do it, So I feel like women aren't putting in the work to keep men. And I feel like a lot of women are just dealing, instead of the category, like they say, you can say adult men, adult men and men. A lot of women are confusing what men are with some of the men or adult males that they are choosing to date or marry. So I think the conception of how they look at it is kind of their vision on it's kind of blurry. And like I said, even earlier, some of the things when I had came in, I was saying I did agree, because a lot of them aren't doing the work. And like Penny said, people give up too fast. You get bored. And then when you guys were talking about the evolution and running by a woman, evolution has to do with self and one's purpose, not your spouse or whoever. If it's for the betterment of the self, why do I have to run that by you? So I feel like, no, we're not putting in the work that's needed. And it was like, it's too easy now. I would say back in the day, yes, but now it's just too easy just to be like, parade around and say that you don't need a man, because it's thousands of women that agree with the women that are saying it. None of us are holding each other accountable with the wrongdoings of what's being said. Most of the times, if we don't agree with it, we'll just sit there and be like, oh, okay, and while everybody else goes on about it.
So I asked Penny a question to the men: do you need a woman or just want one? If so, what do you need or want a woman for?
Mm-hmm.
And Penny pretty much stated that outside of the need to bear children, there's really no other need from the male perspective. Everything else is just a want. And then when I asked him to put more specifics on the want, he mentioned things such as physical touch, companionship, and emotional needs. And then Frank chimed in and stated that we need that feminine energy. And I'll read again what feminine energy is, because it was such a powerful concept. Feminine energy is all of the nurturing traits it takes to connect to human beings in a meaningful and fulfilling way. It's compassionate, kind, empathetic, patient, and emotional. Boy, those make me feel good just reading them, let alone thinking about getting them. It's about embracing your intuition and creativity. Feminine energy is fluid and free. So to that question and the responses, how do you receive those? What's your perspective on those?
I agree that men do need feminine energy. I agree with Penny's saying as well, but I was going to ask him, does he think that's the opinion of majority of all men or just a portion of men today?
That need feminine energy. I think that's most men.
No, the part when you said not the need, you said you just needed women to bear children, and then you said that part.
Yeah, well, with respect to the easy hookup culture, and I kind of laid it out with men with certain attributes can kind of get those things fulfilled. It's no different than on the inverse, women that say that they don't need men can pretty much open an app to get hire men to do those traditional men tasks. I think men pretty much can do that in this current culture because we don't live in a culture that promotes marriage and cohabitation is okay, and so you can meet those needs without marriage because it's so socially acceptable nowadays. And so outside of children in the current environment, you don't need marriage. So I'm just speaking socially. That's why I left out the spiritual piece earlier.
Oh, okay. So I would agree with Penny that you need it. I said I would agree that you need it, but you also need the feminine energy as well for balance. Because the yin yang, you have to balance everything. So, but like Penny said, today we don't live in a culture that supports that. So so majority of men, I feel like they don't need it. They since it's so promoted to the males and the women, like you said, just the hookup culture. Nobody even really they don't think about family like we did back in the day. But I feel like
go ahead, Zuri.
I was going to say, I feel like if we were taught properly from a young age and our views wouldn't be so tainted, we wouldn't think the way that we're thinking.
That leads into kind of relates to my question. Why are women today, in your opinion, not geared that way?
Oh, I think from feminism, it's a lot of factors. I think there's a lot of factors that play into that. Being raised by single mothers, no fathers being around. A lot plays into why women think that women being hurt by men, men being hurt by women. So I think a lot of it plays into that.
Okay, I did some research, and I want to go into that. I didn't want to make leading questions with this particular research. So now that we've got your perspective, I'm going to share this aspect of it with regard to why men are not so eager to marry. But before I do that, I want to get Capri's comments and Frank's comments in. Capri asked a question. Penny, do you think those excuses are driving a trauma culture? And trauma culture is rewarding our culture on either side, male or female, their selfishness.
Absolutely. This hookup culture, which we're in, which is very self-centered. You're not dating with a purpose. You're just kind of moving, going with the flow. You're chasing after pleasure, or quick rewards, and because you're not being purposeful, you're not vetting properly, and this goes on both sides. There's unwanted children. There's a lot of trauma bondings, a lot of sexual partners, which contrary to popular belief, it's not a good thing. And so it's definitely driving a culture of traumatized individuals. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and then to Zuri, Capri asks, Zuri, why do you say that back in the day people were putting in the work, what were the circumstances then that are different now? Go ahead, Zuri.
Okay, I didn't catch that end part because I just had to come back in.
Okay. Capri
What was-
asked, Zuri, why do you say that back in the day, people were putting in the work? What were the circumstances then that are different now?
Whenever say back in the day, I think even kind of before my time, but even still growing up, people were more family oriented. And women believed in roles, as they say, roles, you know, or what their role was in their husbands' lives. And men understood the role that they played as being the leader of the family and like that. But now and today, we don't teach that anymore. It's very, most of us have been and even now are being raised by single mothers, no father around. So, and what was the last part of his question?
What were the circumstances then that are different now? But I think you covered that.
Yeah, now everybody wants to be, I guess, what do they say, liberated sexually, and people take that as, you know, just wanting to sleep with everybody and not having people. We're not holding each other accountable anymore. And a lot of us women, I don't know about men's friendships, but a lot of women's friendships are based off of trauma. They're like trauma bonds. It's not a real true relationship.
God,
So
yes.
how are you going to hold another woman accountable when you're going through the same thing? Or that's why you guys connected, because you guys both have this thing in common. It might not be the exact thing, but it might be on a different level. Or, you know, one might be red and one might be black. But it's still the common goal. So a lot of women's friendships are based off of trauma. They're not really genuine. So you're not going to. And then if you are the type of woman that does hold one of your good friends or just women in general accountable, everybody wants to call you a pick me. That's what they like to say on the internet. Or you might even lose a good friend. Sometimes it's crazy, but it happens. And we're not really holding each other.
You just being a pick me, Shazuri.
I've been called that plenty of times.
I can believe it. I can believe it.
So I feel like that has a lot to do with it. Nobody's holding anybody accountable, and this feminism, letting women be, you know, I think that plays a really big role. And also the government. I think that the government plays a big role in that as well, because nowadays when you do have a baby, back then, I don't know how long ago when Section 8 started, but I know it started. It was still in the 1900s. But now when the government also got involved and gave people Section 8, I'll help you out. Just don't keep the man in the house. So you figure, hey, I can have a baby. You don't got to stay with me. I can get on Section 8 and I'm going to be taken care of by the government. And then, oh, hold up, I can have another baby and you're going to pay me even more? So that's a big dynamic in it as well, in my opinion.
Okay. So this kind of gets into some of the research that I looked up here under the category of men are less interested in marriage than ever before. Why? So I'm going to read through this. Just bear with me for a minute. First bullet point, sex without commitment is getting to be the norm. This is one reason people used to marry young. In the days before free love, it was considered healthy to be in a monogamous relationship where a couple would get sexual relief safely and regularly. In addition, the woman received the security of commitment, because that is the woman's number one need, is security. But these days, most women feel sexual freedom is a good thing and exercise their rights. Bullet point number 2. This is a key one here. This should be this could be a whole show in and of itself. Women are less feminine than ever before. Men naturally want to wear the pants in a relationship, but feminism has taught women that fighting for their rights in a marriage and getting their way all the time is the way it's supposed to be. Men feel that getting involved in committed relationships and marriage equals stress rather than love and a balance of masculine and feminine. Bullet point number 3, and Penny alluded to this earlier. Automation has eased traditional wifely tasks so that men can do them without help. TV dinners, takeout, and restaurant meals have replaced a great majority of the kitchen cooking from scratch women used to do at home as housewives. In addition, washers and dryers let anyone clean and dry their clothes with ease. And then the last bullet point, with a statistical 50% chance of divorce, men can get screwed for life with paying alimony, which can take them to the poorhouse. Men often see the statistics and simply shun the idea of ever getting married. Ooh, look at the body language from Penny.
I agree with everything you just read.
And what's funny is that the popular narrative is that it's the women getting screwed in marriage because men are cheating and leaving them in the poorhouse and all.
You know what? Like one of my favorite points for that, when I hear women say that, I like to say, when you watch the Maury Povich show, what happens?
We never, I don't want to jump into that, but I'm just going to say this. We never talk about the other side of the coin. First of all, we don't talk about the realities of family court and how men get screwed in family court.
Yes, I was going to say majority of women are filing for divorce. It's not the husbands that are filing for divorce.
Right. And men don't get their kids. And then the woman's response is he should know his rights and fight harder. Really? That's the response? You sound like the privileged white male that tells the black person to just obey the police. And then we don't talk about what women do in relationships. Like, for example, I push against this idea about men being, the sole abusers. No, women are just as abusive. It goes unreported. And then verbal abuse and emotional abuse is a real thing. That verbal abuse is real. Those words hurt. And we never talk about the elephant in the room with respect to children, paternity fraud. And there's a few studies out there. One says 3%, one says as much as 15%.
Wow.
So it's somewhere in the middle that there are men raising children or paying child support for children that aren't even theirs. We don't talk about that. We just want to talk about the men.
Exactly. That's why I just mentioned Maury when they said it's the men cheating. But when you go on the Maury Povich show, majority of the women don't know who the father is. So evidently it's not the man.
100% sure.
Yeah. And it never happens.
The most famous 4 words. You are the father.
The father.
Right. Man, there's a clip that was shared with my timeline, and the woman, it's a paternity court, I guess, and the woman sitting there.
I watched that.
That's the baby, and as the judge is reading the results, she is trembling. And when the results determined that the husband was the father, she was relieved, and the judge rightfully so said, "You were nervous, so it's something you probably need to tell your husband." And we all knew that woman been cheating, because ain't no way if you've been faithful to your husband, you getting the paternity results ready, y'all child, and you terrified as you just nervous as hell while the judge reading it. That's common. We don't talk about those things.
Yeah,
But
because
just one of the many ways that men lose in marriage, or marriage is a hard gamble for men, I should say.
All right, so let me pose the question that I posed to Penny to you, Zuri, but from the female perspective. Do you, Zuri, need a man or just want one? And if so, what do you need or want a man for?
yes, I need a man. Not I want one. That's not. I don't even think. I think we need probably a stronger word than need. I need men for guidance, protection. To be. I'm not saying I could be. I am being led, but I'm saying I could lead myself as well. But just for even the logical thinking, the protection, help raise our children. I think men are needed. Men men and women cannot do the same. We can do the same thing, but only for a certain amount of time. Like when women say that, oh, I can go work a construction job like a man. Yeah. For how long though? Your body will be broke down way quicker and faster than a man's body will ever break down doing those jobs.
Wow. Oh, we need more. We need more female involvement here. I would love to hear how that goes over the general female audience.
What, saying that we need more women in certain positions, or the fact that there is a difference between
that there is a difference.
There is a difference.
A lot of them don't accept that. You can't tell them that. You cannot tell them that.
I think you can't tell them that because I think, Penny, you said something earlier when you said that women can get away with saying that they don't need a man or saying this or that. And I think a lot of women parade that around to cover up their hurt on why they don't have one or why they can't keep one.
That's my line about they rather look bad and or look good and lose.
Yeah, so now they spread the narrative to the younger women growing up, or the cycles of generations of females growing up, because they see the norm. And I told somebody, I said, it's kind of scary. I said, it's not really even the ones that are teenagers, 14, 15, 16-year-olds that we have to worry about. I said, you have women in our 50s and 60s getting BBLs, agreeing with stuff Cardi B and Meg the Stallion put out. It's craziness.
It's delusion and lunacy.
Yes.
And
it's hard to even get good guidance now from good women, good men. It's just hard. And a lot of us, or women in general, have been messing with the wrong men. So then they just put them all in that same category. A lot of us have been hurt since we were children, and we hold on to that instead of, I guess they say healing or looking into what the problem really is. And I just like to say, after a certain amount of time and age, you have to really look at it and be like, is it me? Am I the problem? Or
Sure,
take accountability?
No, I was to say, you said a lot of women have like these trauma friendships. And I agree with that. And here's why. We talk, a lot of women, and there's that article about how men are struggling dating today, right? And it's based on the guy that did the research using like the dating app data. But they hold their hat on that by saying men need to step their game up. And I hear this emotional, what do they call emotional? Is it emotional maturity, emotional intelligence they throw around a lot? And my whole thing is this: if you can, if because a lot of women will sit and have these conversations about relationships, and they will all talk about how terrible the men are and all this other kind of stuff. And my response to that is always this: if you are so jaded, right, and all of y'all seem to be jaded, aren't you the one without the emotional intelligence? Aren't you the one that needs counseling and healing? Because if I get bit by a dog, right, by walking down 12th Street, right? And every time I walk down Church Street, I'm nervous. I'm not healed from getting bit by that dog. Does that make sense?
That makes
so they're allowed
sense.
to project they're allowed to project, especially in popular culture, a lot of their shortcomings onto men. That's that accountability piece. They're not holding themselves accountable, and they're not doing the work because they're not encouraged to. There's no incentive to because a lot of women because women dominate the media, so they dominate the popular narrative. And I blame some men for this too, because a lot of men will co-sign that nonsense, and I hate it.
That's what I was gonna say. If the men,
Ooh,
a lot of
I hate it when
times,
men do that.
if men didn't condone it, then a lot of it would be shut down.
Why do the men that you're speaking of condone it? What is their motivation?
Oh, I'll let her respond to that first.
You said what's their motivation for co-signing it?
Yes.
Normally it's always out of sex or wanting to
Yes.
move in the position of their life because they know exactly what that woman needs, but eventually they'll end up being miserable or unhappy because that's not what you truly wanted in the end. And that's why a lot of women end up cheating because, like I said, you don't want that man you could tell everything to do and he's condoning all your BS.
Okay.
I concur. Sex. Take your cape off. She don't want you.
Yeah, that's all it is, because why would you condone something like that that's destructive to our culture, destructive to our people, destructive to our history, especially from now, and I don't know about the future. Hopefully things will change, but going down, like you said, everybody being sexually liberated, like that's a good thing, having 5, 6 partners. And the thing I think a lot of women need to realize is that women are the receivers, men are the givers. So you're dealing with all these men's different, emotions, feelings, and all this stuff. And that's why a lot of times they're confused and don't even know why, because you're sleeping with 4 or 5 different men.
As we're talking, I'm thinking of the reality TV shows, The Housewives of Atlanta, the
Yeah.
Doctors Housewives. And when I bring these up again, I'm not disparaging, I'm not criticizing, I'm not begrudging anyone's way of making a living. However, let's just talk about it from an objective, observational phenomena perspective. What are the female and male types on these type of shows? What are they representing?
Most of them are representing to me that the female's always the breadwinner. And they emasculate the man in different ways. And to me, he's a lot of the times a beta male. But get into that. But I think that's a stereotype, because the first time I really started watching Housewives of Atlanta, I was like, this is the representation that they want of us? And I just couldn't watch it.
I can't sit through it.
And I can see how people say it draws you in. I mean, if you watch, once you start watching it, you get hooked. And then it's like the narrative that they present. I was like, I don't think we need to be presented like this to the world. And everybody thinks that when women see that stuff on TV, they think that that's their reality. No, that's not your reality. That's their reality. And you can't make that your reality and try to make everybody around you believe that that's your reality. Because you really don't even know if that's their reality. It's still television, which equates to entertainment, actors getting paid to do a job.
Penny?
I often ask the question, and I agree with what Zuri's saying. Men are often, Black men in particular, often portrayed as just weak. They have these dominant alpha, quote unquote, alpha women that are doing it big and getting the bag, and the men just kind of sitting in the cup. And even the men that provided their women with these lifestyles is like, well, here you go, honey. Here's the purse string. Do what you want to do, baby. I just stay here in the corner, make your money for you, baby. I hate it. There's a show, and I'll admit it's entertaining. because I can compartmentalize entertainment from being woke, right?
Okay.
But first of all, I want to say that there's not a lot of shows. I can't even think of more than maybe, I don't know, I can think of one show that has a strong patriarchal figure, black,
Right.
let alone black, right? But there's a show that I'm watching, Lady and I are watching, and it's on Hulu. It's about this attorney. It's called Reasonable Doubt. It's about this attorney who was trying this case, and all I can see are the men in this show, right? She's this powerful attorney working with all these men who she dominates because she's smarter than and more powerful than her husband. Her and her are separated, and she cheats on him not once but twice, and she wants to stay with him, and he catches her on camera cheating with her, and he still wants to be with her. And I'm sitting there thinking, this dude is weak. And then there's the guy that she's defending, who's this black billionaire, right? And he's of course married to the white woman, and of course, he's a jerk. And I'm just like, all the men are evil. And then her stepfather molested her as a kid, and like every guy in her life, and then the show is either weak or toxic or bad. There's not any good men in the show other than her little Asian assistant who works for her. And he's intimidated by her assistant, who's a black woman. I'm like, come on, man. No strong men in the whole show. Right. None. And this is that the woman-driven dollar that drives the media, that puts out this popular message. And then I get it, men are less masculine than they are before, but this is the environment that we're creating. And I don't think it's good. I think it's terrible.
It is. It is terrible. I believe it's terrible as well, though. I believe it's terrible as well, because if things really go down, who's gonna protect who?
Let war break out. Good.
Exactly.
To put up arms. These women ain't going, we equal today. We gonna take the gun. No, they're not gonna do that. No, they're not gonna do that. That's why. So Dr. Jordan Peterson, I like this guy. I've been listening lately. I like him. And he said that it's interesting that women talk about the evil patriarchy, right? And these men in positions of power, but there's no issue when the woman is in that same position. Make that make sense. And he also said that they're going to push for the corporate jobs and these high positions of leadership, but you don't see women pushing for the construction or infrastructure, equality in construction and infrastructure, or the dirty jobs in this evil patriarchy. And I put that in quotations, but I don't know. I don't want to go on that tangent.
I agree.
Wow. Penny, your imitations are priceless.
Oh man.
Oh, those are going to go viral.
Oh my God.
Those are future. Note to producer: make viral TikToks of Penny's imitations.
Oh man. Oh my goodness.
They are classic. Okay, so we're going to have to wrap this up, because this can definitely go in some deeper directions. We definitely need to come back, because on the chat before we even got here today, our producer had to calm everybody down because you guys were getting like wound up in the chat room, and he told you guys, "Hey, save that for the show." And so there's some meat on this bone. We had a guest panelist that had an emergency, and I hope everything is well. His name, we're namesakes. His name is George. So I'm looking forward to meeting him. But he brought in an interesting concept called toxic feminism. And he said that is the biggest. He said that's one of the biggest threats to Black men's mental health. So,
I agree.
So I want to come back on part 2. And really get into that. And hopefully we've got some additional panelists to really beat this concept up and play it back and forth with each other. I've been trying to think while you all were speaking, how do we end the show today? I can't think of the positive platitudes, because I don't think this topic is deserving of positive platitudes. We need platitudes of reality. How are we gonna? What do we want? This is an opportunity. This is, since COVID, this is the year of the reset. So what kind of relationships do we want? So you know what? That's what I'm going to do.
Solutions.
We've got about a minute left here for this show, and I want to give the panelists, I guess here, 30 or so seconds to describe or envision the type of relationship that we want in our community. And let's go with Zuri.
You said what type of relationships we need to build for the community?
Describe the type of relationships as it pertains to the male and female. What type of relationships do we want in our community?
We need to learn to be more compassionate with each other, learn how to speak to one another. I think our tone and how we speak to one another has a lot to do with everything. And we need to start realizing that we all truly do need each other in different ways. And we need to really start accepting people for who they are instead of the facade that we create of them. And like I said, let people evolve and be, as long as it's for the greater good for themselves. A lot of stuff that we take personal, we really shouldn't take personal. So I think that has a lot to do with it. So just really realizing as a community, we all need each other in some way, shape, form. We all need each other. And we're not going to make it if we don't have each other, especially for future generations.
I really felt your words on that, Zuri. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Penny.
We need people to stop the cap. And women, ladies, I'm gonna talk to y'all for a second. Because I'm sorry, men understand. The world tells men immediately where they stand. If you're a man that's not working out here hard, you're broke. If you're a man out here that's not, putting in the work, you're not gonna attract women. Period. You're not gonna get that attention. Period. But our women, and we talk about men's fragile egos. Let me tell you, that's something that's more fragile than this quote unquote fragile male ego. It's our women's pride. Y'all pride is terrible. It's destructive. There's a scripture about pride that I'm not going to say right now. Look it up. But the pride it's literally destroying our women, and it's destroying our relationships. And it is your pride that is keeping you from staying in your lane and being honest. Traditional roles work, and y'all want traditional roles. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Be honest. Lose the pride. Put it aside, and stay in your lane. But you gotta lose that pride. Lose the pride, because it's literally destroying y'all. Literally. I'll land it there.
My barber told me this the other day when I was getting my hair trimmed. I just told him a little off the side. He said, look, George, I don't want to be no woman. Stay in your lane.
Yeah.
I'm willing to let you be the woman. I'm the man. Stay out of my lane.
Right.
Exactly.
And then he
Everybody
took
has
too much.
lane.
And then he took too much off. So my words contributing to this question that I asked for you, or statement I asked for you in terms of visioning the future of our relationships. I'm going to read it again because I really loved this concept of feminine energy. And every time I read it, the words were like vibrational energies just going through my body as a man. Okay. So I'm going to read it again. And for all the women out here that are struggling with the content of this show, I'm going to read this concept of feminine energy again. And think about it. Just think about it. Don't agree, don't disagree with it if you're struggling. Just think about it for a minute.
Let it flow.
So Just let it. Ooh, there you go. There you go. So here we go again. Feminine energy is all of the nurturing traits it takes to connect to human beings in a meaningful and fulfilling way. It's compassionate, kind, empathetic, patient, and emotional. It's about embracing your intuition and creativity. Feminine energy is fluid and free. And in the words of Zuri, letting it flow. That just feels good. So, another great show. We had some challenges. We had to deal with the tropical winds, 30 miles per hour. We had to deal with power outages, family emergencies. But the show must go on. So thank you, Zuri, for struggling through and risking your life to do this podcast.
I thank you. I enjoy being on here.
And Penny, brother, I tell you, one is enough. One is one is enough. And I'm waiting for the TikTok virals.
Oh my goodness!
Oh, I'm waiting on them. Those are going to be priceless.
I know it's coming.
It's coming. It's coming. So thank you both. To all of you watchers and listeners. Oh, by the way, let me not forget Frank Jackson, Capri Joel. Your contributions were priceless and invaluable. Thank you for returning. Thank you for your support. So to everyone here, have a great week. And until the next time we meet, we'll see you in the Black Space.